Welcome to the CycleKart Collective. G'day viewers, I'm Pinky. Welcome to the channel. So one of the things that we're doing on our channel is building a CycleKart. So we've been plugging away at this project in the background for a little while, just sort of feeling out what parts we want to use, etc. And one of the things that we've pretty much resolved is the rear axle. Now, here in Australia, some of the parts that you guys are using in the US and Europe are a little harder to find. Something like CT Honda wheels, which are a pretty common wheel for you guys to use. We struggle to get them here. When we find them, they're usually rusted and pretty knocked about and expensive. We can pay $600 or $700 for a set of 4. So it's a fair chunk of your budget when you really work it out. Now, one of the things I've noticed that is around in Great Britain, France, and other parts of Europe, these motorcycle wheels have been quite successful. So these are available here in Australia. They're about $75 a wheel. So when you're looking at $300 for a set of wheels with tyres, compared to around $700, that's a fair saving on a project that's supposed to be about a $2,500 project. So one of the issues has been how to mount them to the axle. So I think I've come up with a reasonably good solution. So we'll have a quick walk through and see what we've got. So the first thing I managed to do was find myself an axle that I thought was long enough. So this is 1100 millimeters long. Now it is a 30 mil axle as opposed to your typical 1 inch or 25.4 mil. Couple of reasons. One, I found that when I look at the go-kart hubs that are out there, once you jump up to 30 mil, they tend to be a 4 stud pattern rather than a 3, which I think is a little stronger. And also with the actual wheels themselves, they have about a 28.5 mil or 28.9 mil, something like that, internal diameter, which is cast and a little bit rough. So using a 25 mil diameter axle through the wheel has a lot of slop. By getting that wheel and getting a die grinder and just opening that up to about 30 mil, it gives a really nice snug fit on here, giving it a bit more sort of strength, I think, or less chance of flexing too much. So so we went with the 30 mil axle, which has been, I think, is a good solid solution. Now these hubs are available with that 4 stud pattern, and there are things out there like these cogs that are available already. So we can actually set up cogs. You can actually set up an indoor inside brake if you'd like to, inside the body line. In this case, I have the brake discs that come with the wheels. I've been thinking about using those, but it means setting up brakes outside the body of the car. So I don't know, we'll see what happens. But one of the things you can do as you're assembling this, you don't have to use that brake disc. So we could delete that if we want to and just build the rest of the assembly as it is and use an inboard brake disc if you want to, using one of these hubs. So one of the first things I had to do to get this hub to fit the wheel was come up with a plate. So here we have a 10 mil plate. Now what I've done is I've milled out, lathed out the center so that we've got a nice snug fit, as you can see there, and we're using countersunk screws to actually bring that together. Now the reason we're using countersunk screws is because this face is going to be up against the back of the wheel, and we want to make sure that nothing's stopping this from getting its full footprint, I guess you could say, against the back of the wheel. Now I'll just put a couple in. I'll zip those up. Now I don't normally use the impact driver for something like this, just for the sake of the video. Nobody wants to sit here for 20 minutes while I'm doing up nuts and bolts. Once that's bolted on, that'll just slide onto your axle like that. Now the axle is keyed, so it does have a keyway running the whole length of the axle, which is great, so you can set things up wherever you like. Obviously the hub is keyed as well, so there's a key for that, so we'll come back to that in a minute. So the next thing we'll do in my case is put on the brake disc. So I'll put that into position, and then we'll put the wheel on. Just make sure you've got it facing the right way. There is actually a locating ring built into that hub for the brake disc, so make sure you've got that facing in. Now I made up this plate here, 4 mil I think from memory, but basically the face of this hub here versus the the face of this ring in here, that distance is the same as this washer. So that allows me to put that on here, bring the wheel forward. We can actually sit that inside the wheel so we get a nice flush fit. And then this axle came with a couple of castellated nuts. So you would normally put a spring washer behind the castellated nut. Now they're not drilled, the axle, so you will have to drill your own hole if you're going to use the castellated nut. Or the other option is you just swap the whole thing out for a nylock. So just nip that up. All right, nice and straight. Okay, so the assembly on the back is a bit hard to see from here, so bear with me for a second. I'll just move the camera around. Okay, so here we are at the back of the wheel. So basically all I've done at this point is mounted that wheel. We've put that plate on the front there with our castellated nut. Now we're going to put this brake disc on in this position here and locate that. And we can then slide this guy forward. Take these bolts here. Pardon me while I'm doing this left-handed, so hopefully I don't go too slow. There we go. And again, as I mentioned before, I wouldn't use a impact drill, but for the sake of the video, I'll just gently nip those up. Okay, once that's on, we've got a key to go into our keyway and locate in there, and that stops everything from rotating on the axle. And as you can see here, there's a couple of screws there. We'll just tighten those up, and that'll just lock everything into place. Now I'm not going to tighten them. I'm just showing you the idea. There we go. So what we have now is that 10mm plate, which is quite strong. We're using that as our go-between. That's not actually threaded, and we're bolting into this face, which we know that that's a pretty solid setup. We're bolting into the back of the wheel, which hopefully is a pretty solid setup. We've got that solid axle running right through the middle, taking most of the brunt of the force on this wheel. So I think it's a pretty good setup. The aluminium hub and the spokes are probably the weak point in all of this, but I guess we'll find that out once it's on the track. So this setup will stop it from moving left and right. Keyway will stop it from rotating. I think we're pretty good. You can do the same thing with your setup in here using the keyway, and we'll come up with some sort of, I don't know, some simple little band to go around here to stop the key from coming out. And we'll have to use the same on these and again on the brake. But that's it, and we'll come back around the front. All right, so there we go. So that's our whole axle and wheel assembly put together. Now, keep in mind that the distance between this hub and this hub on this particular setup is about 735mm. Once I come up with a solution to stop that key from falling out, I'll obviously have to incorporate that into my measurements as well. But I think anything from around 680mm and under would be perfectly fine for your chassis width. So keep that in mind. If you're going to use this particular setup, you want to stay within that sort of distance so you don't run into any problems later on down the track. So really that's about it. Now there are bearings available. These ones here are a P206. They're pretty common with a 30mm centre. They'll fit straight on there, so they're really good for bolting onto the chassis. That's one way of doing it. I'm sure you can come up with others if you wanted to. But yeah, that's basically it. So thanks for watching. And as the build progresses, we'll make sure we do some more videos. Now all these parts that are readily available off the shelf, I'll try and put some links to some sources for those. And for the actual plates and bits and pieces that we've made ourselves, we'll hopefully have those on the website fairly soon. So if you want to purchase any of those from us, you can. In the meantime, feel free to reach out through YouTube or through Facebook. You'll find us on there somewhere, and we'll be happy to set you up with a set. All right, thanks very much, and we'll see you on another one.